the dedication and the discipline that these children show in their training and performing is just amazing. I'm actually in disbelief. Talking to Oleg, I want to try to create some sort of film and bring it back to Australia. If you're a circus artist, trainer, please come to Perth. And people lining up for coffee at the coffee shop, and there's explosions overhead at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then walking to the bomb shelter. I want to try to help getting our government getting more support for Ukraine. That's one thing. I do like the borscht.
Вітаю вас, шановні любителі циркового мистецтва. Мене звати Максим Сидоренко. Я ведучий та автор подкасту «Бла-бла Циркус». І ми продовжуємо говорити про циркове мистецтво. Сьогодні маємо дуже незвичайного гостя у нас. Зараз я поясню, чому. Це австралієць Кріс Мех'ю, який приїхав в Україну в гості, щоб подивитися і познайомитися з українським цирковим мистецтвом. І ми сьогодні будемо говорити з Крісом про цирк в Україні, цирк в Австралії, що Кріс побачив за 3 тижні його перебування в нашій країні. І наш подкаст буде англійською мовою, так що, шановні любителі циркового мистецтва, вивчаємо англійську мову. Для тих, хто не розуміє англійську, в нас, звісно, будуть субтитри, так що, будь ласка. So, Chris, you are welcome. Nice to meet you. For our international audience, I will tell that I am Max Sidorenko. And we are at the podcast, which is called Bla-bla Circus, where we talk about circus in Ukraine and the world. Chris, Great. You're welcome. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Max. It's a pleasure to be here. It's very surprised for me to be in this podcast, but I'm going to roll with it. So thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah, absolutely happy to see you here. Chris, can you make a quick intro to our audience and tell about yourself? Why did you decide to come to Ukraine and what's your circus background?
Sure. I own a small school in Perth, Western Australia. In 2022, I had a girl from the Ukraine, their family who fled at that time. They came to my school and I just opened my doors. It was great to have her, and it was so horrific to see what was happening in the Ukraine, and seeing this girl, often it just made me very sympathetic to what's going on, as well as a friend of mine, Oleg Kurinsky, who's a teacher here. I've been following him on Facebook and communicating with him. He's helped me with suggestions about my students since 2019, and he's always said, you're welcome. Now I decided to come over in my little holiday break just for a very short stay of maybe a week. But since I came here, I'm just fascinated by the circus here, the children training, also, how they are, the people are so brave, and parents are making this, situation calm for their children. They can train, and they're also training extremely hard. So I'm just fascinated about it. And the city is beautiful. The people are very courageous and very beautiful. And I just want to learn more.
It's a complimentary intro from you, Chris. So we'll talk about that as well. So you are telling that you are a director at a circus school in Australia, and you told that it's small. But I already know that it has 200 plus students. Is it a small school if we talk about Australia, or you are just too shiny to say that it's a large school?
Well, I would say it's a small school, as generally in circus in Australia, it's very much a recreational pursuit, almost like a sport. And the children generally come once a week, sort of maybe for 1.5 hours. So whereas in the school that I'm watching with Oleg, the children there are training 4 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. So, yes, we might have 200 students, but they're really only coming once a week generally. We might have 30 children that come twice a week and who are training a little bit more harder, but it's more of a recreational pursuit. But yes, so that's why I'd say it's a small school. It's not like 200 students training 5 days a week.
And why did you decide actually to establish your school? Did you have a background from the circus or sports? What was the turning point that you decided to open the school in Australia?
Sure. Yes, I had a background first in competitive gymnastics. I competed in like Australian national level, and then sports acrobatics, where I also competed nationally. My coaches were Kazimir Jednorog from Poland, and he and his wife Irina were circus performers, and they opened the doors, and I just fell in love. I eventually was living in a caravan on their front lawn while I was training, and trying to learn as much about circus as I could. I was quite late into the realm of like performing professionally, and I would say for a person that has very little talent, can't sing, dance, or act, I managed to somehow have a fairly good career. Where I worked overseas. I did cruise ships. I did lots of shows overseas in Australia. Even a few films. One film by Baz Luhrmann called Moulin Rouge, where I had to partner Nicole Kidman and doing all the acrobatic tricks and lifts with her. A few things like that. So I was very lucky.
That's exciting story. That's exciting story. So that was my next question. Talking about your career and path in circus, what are the most, let's say, impressive things that you recall from your career to share?
Sure. For me, it was my love of like doing that partner work, doing adagio. So I think just being able to choreograph and create a really nice act. I had an opportunity to perform with a few orchestras. We used a piece of music called Barber's Adagio by Samuel Barber. That to me was like the highlight of my career. Whether or not I'm performing for a little school with children, or in a big stage at the Sydney Opera House or something like that. So it was just that performing was a beautiful thing. It was a great joy to be able to do that in my life. For me, any performance, it didn't matter if I was paid or not. It was just something very special. It was kind of like living my dream.
Cool. So did you work in Australia or overseas as well? Because you told that you had a cruise ship, some shows.
Mostly in Australia, but I did get trips where we would be asked to perform in India or Taiwan, and on cruise ships based out of the US. So that small little contracts, on cruise ships or different things, but mostly in Australia. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And what's the turnkey point for you to decide that you're ready to open your school? And if the school is more perceived as a sort of recreational stuff, is it more oriented to give an experience of circus for people to decide then to go further, or what's the philosophy behind the school?
Sure. It's a bit of both. I really think circus is beneficial for children. There's so many things they can do, but also and that can help with their confidence and their resilience, their motor skills, their social skills. There's so many skills that circus offers, like sport as well. But also, if there's a chance that someone has that eagerness and desire to go further, I think I can help them, because I've had to travel a long road to get to the professional level.
Okay, got it. Okay, we shall get back to Australia in any case and to Australian circus. Thank you for this introduction. So I think that now people understand why are you so interested in circus. Getting back to present reality, so you decided to come to Ukraine. It was surprising for me when I got a call from actually Oleg Korinsky, who told me, Max, don't you want to talk to Chris Mayhew, who decided and who dared during the war to come to Ukraine to watch the circus? Actually, what was your goal of getting into Ukraine right now at this time and to watch circus, experience circus here?
Sure. Really, the number one goal was to go.
Are you Russian spy? That's it. I just have to clarify. We have to record it on camera.
Sure. I'm actually a burnt out circus school administrator. And so my
Okay,
aim was
okay.
to go to a war zone and then renew myself. But look, really, it was to visit Oleg Karinski's school. Watching his kids was on Facebook and Instagram over the years has just been amazing. They're at such a high level, and I could not believe that. And it is a hard path having your own business, not being supported by the government, and sometimes it can be a little bit daunting. And it was. I had this break, and I thought I've got to come over. Plus the situation in Ukraine, who knows what's going to happen in the future. I wanted to come. Also, with like for me, my heart goes out to the kids here. I just wanted to find out really what's happening. So I took the opportunity. I didn't know if I would get turned back at the border, but everyone has been so wonderful since I've arrived.
Yeah, you're a lucky one because you also had a chance to attend the first festival, Golden Gate Cup, and you also had to see not only students in their classes but on the large stage in the circus. So what's your impression about the festival, about the kids that you saw? Because you had a chance to see how Oleg Karinsky's students train and how they perform, and you had to observe other students. What do you think? What's your impression?
I'm amazed. The dedication, I don't know what it is, maybe it's the Ukrainian culture, the dedication and the discipline that these children show in their training and performing is just amazing. I'm actually in disbelief. It's very unusual for us to see that kind of
that's
dedication.
Cool. Disbelief. We will. I do not believe that I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, in Australia, and I mean, I love the kids I teach, and it's fantastic, and I encourage them. And many do work, but they might be working for six hours a week, or 3 hours a week, or 4 hours a week, not 20, 30 hours a week, which these children are doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's also that motivates us to create this media, because the dedication of the people from the circus to their art is tremendous.
Yep.
Okay, let's imagine that. Let's imagine that in a year you recall what you saw on the stage in this national circus. What are the top acts that, let's say, touched your heart? Can you recall someone or some act?
Of course. Certainly, Oleg's students just stand out for me. The technique, I've not seen that before. But as well, from the festival, watching such a high level of artistry in these 9 and 10-year-olds that are conveying a story. And, from my point of view, with the music, there was a story, and I think it was pretty much in the present time of challenge, of war, of hopes and dreams and loss, and these were conveyed. I don't know really the Ukrainian stories, but seeing some of these children perform on stage, just I was trying not to cry. It was pretty moving for me. So and that their incredible level where they are now, to me it seems they're already at the top.
Absolutely.
And they're 9 and 10. I'm just
the question which we usually ask ourselves when we attend this festival: what's next? What could be higher? Yeah. So you had a chance to watch kids, and you told that you are absolutely amazed with that festival. And what about Australian festivals? Do you have some these kind of festivals for kids in Australia? So do you have actually the base to compare with?
Sure. There's one. It's one competition in Australia, or similar to a festival, which is name's just it's called Bend the Air. A friend of mine who was in Cirque du Soleil, Darren Smith, has put on this, and it's just the first few years where they're going around to each state, having a competition and having a national championships. Where the students are is fantastic, but they're certainly nowhere near the level of performance that we have here. like I even taught at the two Australian schools. One is a primary and high school called the Flying Free Fly Circus. That's in Albury Wodonga, and that's where high school age children go and learn circus, and that's funded by the government, as well as the NICA, which is the National Institute of Circus Arts. I also taught there. And that's the degree program for professional students to go and study circus for 3 years. They get a degree and go off into the industry. I don't want to sort of make anything put that down them, but certainly these children were well above anything like I've seen come out of any of those schools. It's just I think whether that's a circus culture or the coaching and that culture of training, and also I might sort of say that what Oleg told me, the golden hour of circus really is that young age, 7, 8, 9 to 12. If they can get that training done in that age group, physically they're going to be much more capable rather than if they start at 16 or 17.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think that's both. That's like a dedication of people, the age they start, and long-standing tradition. Because that circus in Ukraine is a big art, actually. Because we have lots of schools, I would say hundreds of schools, private and state-owned. And you told that your school is funded, yeah?
And my school's not funded.
Your school is not funded. Yeah. How is it going in Australia? Because you told that there are some private, state-owned in regard to financing and to landscape of the schools.
Sure. Circus is a very like a minority art form, and it is struggling in Australia. To be honest,
surprised to hear that.
It is actually. I think one thing is it's quite small compared to ballet or the sports. Football and cricket. Aussies really support that. We really would have only a few thousand participants in circus. With children, and professionally, we have a handful of companies, that are doing quite well. But it's for people working full time, it's probably more contract to contract. So it's not huge, and just with the cost of living, it is quite a struggle to be an artist, and it just as a sole business owner myself, I don't even pay myself yet. I see this as such a worthy thing. It's something I can give to the community, to the children, from my background of doing this. So I'm prepared to do that, but it's a struggle really. But having said that, we have in Perth, we have a festival called the Fringe Festival. And circuses that go there generally always are, fairly well attended. Mm-hmm. So there is quite a lot of interest. It's just it's difficult to do to be an artist. I think anywhere. It's not like you're a lawyer or a doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's because you have to invest much, really, and that's a tough job. The question is following. I think that it's time to talk about the tradition in Australia circus. We know much about European circuses. The lots of festivals, long-standing traditions from 17th century. We know that circus is really huge and big in North America, but Australia is a different continent. Yeah. How about the circus? How did it come to Australia, and how do you see this art right now? What's the place of this art in Australia?
Sure. Well, I do know we have a family circus called the Ashtons, Pepe Ashton, who runs that, and that's been in Australia for about 150 years, one of the longest traditional family circuses. But so we have a few small traditional circuses, and we would get circuses coming in from overseas, and often different, like the Moscow Circus, and I think which was bought by an Australian company. It's just the brand name, probably shouldn't mention that. Sorry.
We can mention because when I was preparing for this podcast, I saw that in early 90s, in 1991 or 1991, first, the brand name, which is the Great Moscow Circus, was purchased by a circus family, I suppose, from Australia.
Michael Edgley,
and it continues owning this trademark.
That's right.
And continues rolling down with that trademark. I'm not sure that is the best time for this naming right now, and
but I totally
but
understand,
that's a fact for our audience,
especially considering we're there's an air raid siren going off as we speak.
For our audience,
But okay, another thing is with Australia, just in the recent years with the animal rights movement. That has affected, and it made it different. Many municipal areas and councils would not let traditional circuses with animals come in and perform. And since the 70s, there was a company called Circus Oz, and they're a nationally funded company. I was lucky,
very famous.
Yeah, I actually toured with them to South America as a performer, and they've got a few, and so that's that contemporary circus. And we have a few companies like Circa and Gravity and Other Myths, and they do very well touring their shows. They often tour to international festivals, and these are contemporary circuses, often in the genre of Toss the Girl, which is a genre of circus that they seem to, Australians seems to really love. It's got that acrobatic element where, you might have 4 or 5 bases, whether they're men, women, throwing someone on creating pyramids. Circa does an outstanding job with their director. They often work with opera and classical music and produce very lavish productions. So that's where Australia, I think, has actually done quite well in that contemporary circus space.
I see at least one common thing that in Ukraine we have a very well-developed traditional circus, and it's experienced not the best times. And this experience of not the best time also related to that huge movement like circuses without animals.
Yeah.
So this movement also affected circus in Australia, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
Right. And what about the traditional circus right now? Do they also touring? How this actually problem was tackled? Because killing traditional circus and emptying space and moving to contemporary circus, that's not always the way. How Australian circus deal with that?
Well, with the Ashtons, they've actually created a non-animal show, which is more of an adult show, and they're doing quite well touring that. Some of the other circuses that I know, they've kind of cut down on their animals. They might have horses and dogs as part of their act. So it's not considered so much like the elephants and lions. I almost never I haven't seen a circus with elephants and tigers and things for such a long time.
Big cats, yeah. How they call them big cats, yeah.
Big cats, yeah. Basically, because I think that most councils won't have them. It's just so so strong against that.
Got it. And you know that right now most of circuses, they are privately owned, they are touring. And do you have some stationary circuses? Because for your Australian audience, I think that it will be an interesting fact that we have 6 stationary circuses. They are all state owned, and these buildings usually that's, let's say, buildings from post-Soviet or from Soviet era, built in 60s and 70s, but they give a really huge space for audiences with 2,000 plus or 1,000 plus seats for spectators, and circus shows can be found there every week, I would say, almost every week, especially when it comes to, let's say, New Year celebrations, or when there's a start of the circus season in September, October, you can find circus in almost any large city. And what about Australia? Do you have some stationary circuses as well?
No, we have nothing like that. The biggest thing probably that really with circus is Cirque du Soleil that comes in and sets up their tent. That would be the biggest type really show that we would have. Apart from that would be the fringe festivals where you would have the smaller circuses and many contemporary independent artists that use fringe as a way to to earn a living and show their performances. And the fringe is supported partially by, usually it's companies. Sometimes the state government will support it to some degree, but it's not very well supported.
I got it. Getting back to your students,
Sure.
In Ukraine, we have quite a clear path. If you're a student at school, you're 7, 10, let's say even 15 years old, you train with your coach, and then you have a clear vision of your career path. You can continue your education, go into, let's say, a circus academy. In Ukraine, there's such an academy. Then after the circus academy, you can, sure, if you are an artist and you show good performances and you performed at the festivals, you were on the circus scene in Ukraine, you can select a circus to work in. So it could be a national circus. This could be a show that is usually traveling around Ukraine and working in other circuses, state-owned. And then you move to foreign countries and work in some famous circuses. What about Australia? What's that path of Australian kids if they come to your school? Let's say if they are 10 years old. By the way, what's the youngest kid in your school?
The youngest is maybe 4.5.
4.5. Okay, the good age.
Sure.
Oleg Krinsky would say
Sure.
that's
Okay,
correct age.
sure.
Yeah. So what's that path for a student? Okay, you go, you train to circus center, and what then?
Okay, it's a little bit unclear, especially I'm a very new teacher and my school's fairly new. We've had students go on to overseas schools, but we do have a training centre in Melbourne called NICA I spoke about, which is the National Institute of Circus Arts.
Mm-hmm.
They can audition to get into that school and complete a 3-year degree program. They come out of it with a Bachelor of Circus Arts, yeah. And hopefully they'll have a good enough act. Often what happens in that school is as they produce shows, often they work together. And during that 3 years, they often formalize a new independent company themselves. Mm-hmm. So that seems to be very prevalent, that they formalize these independent little groups and then go off seeking funds and touring themselves. There's really a handful of companies, maybe 5 companies like Circus Oz, GOM, Circa, that will audition new students, but often those students are already chosen a year before because everyone really knows everyone at that level. So that's kind of the way. But for my school, if someone's coming once a week, we see them. We have a performance program. We've just asked a new crop of students into our performance program, so they'll attend their normal class, or what I say is skills class, mm-hmm. and they'll attend a performance class, and we'll try and get them performance opportunities. I'll also, if someone is very keen, I just open my doors and I want them to, come in and train. Often with the state, with what we're also doing is many of my young students are also teaching. Now that might be a little bit of a different thing.
That's a common practice in Ukraine as well.
Okay,
so when you're at the level that you can teach and you can perform simultaneously, you do that as well.
Yeah, and so as presently, I've got a crop of probably about 8 or 9 teen girls from age 15 to 17 who are taking my younger classes, as well as half a dozen adults who manage the school as well. And of course, they can train anytime. And I'll often work with them, just whenever I can to help them and try and get them employment opportunities, and help with either sending them towards NICA or potentially looking at overseas circus schools, mm-hmm. which they can attend.
Yeah. It was saying that your city and your school is located to the east of Australia, and the largest cities like Sydney, Melbourne.
They're in the east.
They are on the east, and you are you're on the west.
That's right.
And that's totally opposite to the largest cities. Why so?
Well, I grew up in Perth, and although I spent most of my adult life based in Sydney,
Perth, it's the city of
yes, that's
Christian.
right, West Australia. It's I think one of the most isolated cities in the world geographically. It's a 5-hour flight to the east coast. So I did base my career in Sydney, but then mum and dad, getting older, so I made.
We do not want to see people at all. Let's go to some calm place, where there are a lot of lakes,
Yeah, it's a beautiful city. We have the best beaches in the world. Honestly, if you like beaches and relaxing, if you're a circus artist, trainer, please come to Perth. There's a lot of need for you. And we've got the best beaches. The climate is beautiful. It's a lovely, clean city. So that's where I.
But so
started.
far from Sydney and Melbourne.
It's only it's better than a 16-hour bus ride.
But that's really impressive, because you are telling that it's really like most isolated city on the west coast. It's 5 hours from the other large city by plane, and 200 plus students at school. Sure. I think that you underestimate the value of circus art and the interest in circus art in the country, because it's really interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think we've aimed to give, like, almost become a sport to so that young kids can do something that's different. Our state is really a big mining state. We have, I actually worked in a gold mine for a period of time after I left school, and it was very difficult. But
that's actually how Chris finances his school. He has a gold mine under the school.
Shh, don't tell anyone.
we shall cut it.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of mining. So we've done okay with the economy with the big mines,
is it still a mining city, or that's at the time of 19th century?
No, it still is a mining city. Yeah, we've got some big companies. WA is a vast area of land. You can you need to travel 2 days by car to get out of WA. Really, so.
Clear. Okay, that's quite impressive. I saw that you were recording some performances acts, and you told me that you also did the same at Korinsky School.
Yes.
Did you do that for, let's say, like a teaching and then experiencing the methodology of like Korinsky, or was that some idea, another idea behind? Okay. Can you explain?
Yes. Look, I originally just came over to for a few days, but since I've been here, it's just been so amazing. It affected me quite a lot, hearing the air raid sirens at night and hearing these explosions, from the hotel. And then,
how long, by the way, do you stay?
I've been here 3 weeks.
Oh, so you had a chance to hear all that.
Yeah, exactly. And then going to the school the next day and seeing these children and watching them train for 4 hours with such dedication, that really affected me. And talking to Oleg, I want to try to create some sort of film and bring it back to Australia to show the Australian audiences what is happening in Ukraine. Air raid sirens, and you're being attacked. This is absolutely terrible. So I want to try to help getting our government getting more support for Ukraine. That's one thing. On the second thing is just with the circus community in Australia. I would like to improve and aid our community, lift their level. And I think mostly in our community, we have what's called social circus or circus for recreation, which is fantastic. But I think, we can learn a lot about development, about, how children, how hard children have to work to achieve that level, because our artists, when they graduate from NICA or when they enter the workforce, they have to compete against other artists as well. And, we like to brag that, we're at the forefront, but, like and we are doing some great things, and circus is not just about, Olympic level gymnastics. It's about entertaining and artistry. But I think we've got a long way to go as far as the physical development and training our own youth.
Yeah, but by the way, you told about the competition, and it's very interesting fact that in Ukraine there is a huge movement of aerial gymnastics, and basically it was like a circus art, but now they are, let's say, splitting these two things and going into a totally different movement and creating even federations of aerial gymnastics.
Yes.
So rings, straps, anything else. So that's a huge movement, and it already becomes a sort even of a sport. So they convert it in sport competition where there are festivals, cups, and like a sort of additional motivation. What's about Australia? Is it also perceived or considered as a sport, or it's still an art and circus art purely?
Look, I think the small, the not-for-profits and the circus schools want to maintain that grip on that circus for funding reasons. Then you've got, my school, I've got 8 silks, 3 liras, 3 trapezes, more than anyone.
3 trapezes.
Yeah. I mean, and
you definitely underestimate the level of your school, Chris. I tell you.
But and I'd love to put up more, but because everyone wants to do silk, so that aerial component is extremely strong. That age group of 8 to 12 girls who normally do dance, cheerleading, gymnastics have really adopted that whole aerial. They love it. It is something big. It's something that I'm kind of cashing in as well. Because I see the potential. I can groom them into other areas of circus, acrobatics and different and performing as well. So to me it's an open door, but I think there's opportunities in both.
The answer is very simple. It's very spectacular. So when you watch when someone is flying in the circus on the height, which is 10 meters, sometimes 12, 15 meters, like it happens in the shows that you can see this weekend. We invite you to go to the National Circus of Ukraine and to see some really top performances at the top height. So that's clear.
That's right. I mean, look, once you climb above, your head height and you're on an apparatus, whether it's trapeze, lyra, or silk, I think the general audience goes, "Oh, that's fantastic." And not to take anything away from that, but looking at what Oleg does with these girls on the handstands and just the ability and the control that they have over their bodies at such a young age, to me is like Olympic level gymnastics. Whereas, and that's so astonishing, but often you don't see that until they get to that level. Whereas in aerial, just a young 10-year-old who's climbing up above the silk and doing a few little drops, fairly basic, for their mum and dad is like, wow, this is amazing. So it's a little bit easier, I think, to get in aerial that recognition of, excellence rather than the years of dedication and hours that's required in that acrobatic, equilibrium.
That's actually a completely different genre. So, and there are lots of also there are lots of different genres that demand more investment of the time and efforts in that. Okay, so what are the impressions that you will bring from Ukraine? Because if we put aside the circus, you are staying here 3 weeks already. You've heard all that sirenas, alarms, and what about Kiev? What's your opinion?
It's such a beautiful city, and it's something struck me about Kiev. I've been very disciplined. I've only caught 2 taxis here. I've been trying to use the train system and the public transport. Really struggling with the language. It's quite hard. I massacre even Dakuya or whatever. Thank you. Dakuya. Everyone, but people are so friendly, and a lot of people are quite good at English. The food is, fantastic as well. The architecture is just unbelievable. The buildings here, I understand, I'm careful what I photograph because I don't want to photograph anything I'm not supposed to.
Yeah.
And just the day-to-day, after being woken at night and kind of, trying to get some sleep, the air raid sirens or all those explosions, which, are confronting.
How quick have you used to that sound? Or you are not still used to
look,
that?
I mean, when the air raid siren goes off at 2 a.m., I am listening for the explosions. It's just something that is like
we are smiling right now, but that's a trauma of war, I would say, because it's difficult to talk about that stuff and to smile. But
and then to see the next day, young kids just going to school by themselves, and people lining up for coffee at the coffee shop, and there's explosions overhead at 11 o'clock in the morning, and then walking to the bomb shelter. It's just, such an amazing resilience by the Ukrainian people that I'm seeing. It's very moving. I think people are very brave here. But I do, see a sense of, being at war in everyone, and the men, in green. Green seems to be the color of the Ukrainian people at the moment. Military style. There's something. It's astonishing, and to witness and to just be here and witness what's happening at this time. And I really think the world needs to get behind Ukraine to help solve this terrible issue.
Absolutely the same thing comes to our minds when we go to the festival or to the circus show. We see how beautiful the life is, how many really good things we can experience in our life, and this war on the background is so ridiculous that it's happening here with the people. So that's why actually we decided. Maybe it will be interesting for your audience also. We decided to make a photo exhibition in Berlin, and probably we will exhibit the photos in other cities if you wish, or if you help us, we can do this in Australia to showcase Ukrainian circus artists who still perform in Ukraine and outside Ukraine during the war. And we wanted to tell the stories about the war through the art, through the stories of these people who find themselves in the obstacles that were not experienced by any other artists in the world who worked in the circus.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure, in some World War II and World War I, that was different experience. But after that, it's an uncomparable experience. So we want to share that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, good. Chris, maybe that's your time to ask some questions, because I'm sure that your students, if they are not tired yet, they will watch. And I see you have some recordings.
Sure,
records.
Sure,
You're welcome. I promised you.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, I just need to.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So I'd just like to know, just in in Ukraine, how many circus schools? What are we looking at here? I've heard some numbers like.
Before the war, there were 200 plus schools that work in different cities, maybe even more. So I don't want to be wrong with this number. We will definitely put this number into the comments to this video.
Right.
So I learned, but in regard to the scale, I would say that the largest circus festival, which is Diva Circus, that is held in June in Ukraine, it gathers 500 plus kids from all over the Ukraine. And that's not just even half of those who train at the high level. So there are, even in Kyiv, you may find dozens, I would say, of circus schools and places where you can learn and teach that art. In regard to the structure, these are relatively small, I would say, schools. with maybe 10, 20, 30 students, and a few schools that gather up to 100 and 200 students as yours. But the approach, as you could see, is really serious here. If you are at circus school and if you train, so this means that you are in the movement, and this movement pushes you to do some art, which is really motivates you to go to the festival, to create that costume, to create the performance. And that's why at the age of 10, 9, 11, these students are already artists. Most of the schools, they were established by former artists. There are some traditional schools that take their time from 70s and 80s, so from the Soviet time. And that's like the case of, let's say, Oleg Korinsky, because Oleg Korinsky has his son. They both performed, and now they both have their own schools.
Right.
So, and that's a, let's say, classical story for the circus in Ukraine.
Sure, fantastic. What struck me a lot, which I think you've touched on, the students themselves, the seriousness that they go about training, whether or not, I must admit I'm very ignorant of the culture, and sometimes people probably see me walking in the
Ukrainians
street.
are tough guys. They're serious. They are not smiling.
And I smile at them and say, hello, and they're like, what the
What? Yeah, that's one thing that people who come to Ukraine should know. That's not because the war or something, because Ukrainians are very serious guys.
Sure. Sure.
If they train, they train.
Well, just to see these young kids, who might be, the teenage girls are on their phones, just, while they're not practicing and talking and stuff, or they may have a little game or something, but then they'll get on the apparatus. They'll ask, they'll just go straight without being asked and do their 10 press-ups. Or they'll ask Oleg, can I go through my routine? And, he'll be like, no, you'll be going next or whatever. But then they'll get up to the apparatus and go through their routine with such a seriousness about them. An air raid siren would go off and they wouldn't even blink. And it has just struck me, whether that is part of the psyche of Ukrainian children or something else, or the commitment which you touched on, that they've now entered into this world of circus, and that they're striving for this art form. And it's not real. Whereas in Australia, we have this, it's really, quite often, like in my 5 to 7 class, we kind of call it herding cats, because you're running after these kids and trying to get them down and line them up and stuff like that. Here, there's none of that. I mean, to a certain degree.
I think that there are 3 levels of that.
Sure.
First, it's the background is the culture. So in Ukraine, I would say that still that's a sort of some post-Soviet education.
Right.
So you have to be gathered. If you're somewhere and if you're educating, if you're learning something, you have to be gathered. So that's like your internal understanding of the processes. So you are not too relaxed. First. And there are 2 other factors. When you get to the school and when you are a kid and you already see that level, you just have only 2 choices. Either you stay and train because you have a motivation to do the same things as these guys already do, or you leave it because no one shall press you and tell that you should do that, or it's a nature of circus art. You can press the person, but if the person doesn't have a motivation, you'll not do that tremendous things.
Right.
So you will not work hard for 4 hours, 5 hours. It will be clearly seen. So I spoke to Oleg, to Irina Zherdeva, to many other actually circus coaches, and I also questioned them the same thing. How could it be a kid of 8 years old? She does 10, 20 push-ups with something with that serious, and they told we do not say anything. We just say that if you want to do that, you do that, and we give you just a base. So yeah.
Look, I found it extremely striking and moving to see this because I don't think this is foreign to Australia. It is absolutely foreign. I think that's the Ukrainian circus. Ours is, to a degree, and then they get serious. Then they have their goals and things like that. But it's really about the students' enjoyment, and I think there's a little bit of the Australian psyche, and also, I mean, unfortunately, circus is so obscure in Australia that parents really they're just taking their children to something that their children want to do, but as soon as that child doesn't want to do it, they're off to ballet lessons or soccer.
Sure,
or something.
there should be some balance.
Okay,
Sometimes you have to
Yeah.
to be tougher in your approaching.
Sure,
the kids.
absolutely. But I'm just finding. I mean, I wonder in other cultural pursuits or sport or art in Ukraine, is that similar? Is that similar? If they go to play soccer here or football,
I would say that I think that this is the case for any type of
Right.
sport or engagement, and
Sure.
that's also related to parents.
Yeah. Okay.
You just have to imagine the parent of that kid. That's
Sure.
usually a person who is aged 30, 40, 50 years old. That the person who grew up in 90s, 2000s, and that was a period when we had so many opportunities.
Right.
And right now in Ukraine, after the 20 years of our independence, it's like a blowing thing that lots of opportunities arose. You've got lots of chances. Lots of schools were opened. We have opened the world international, and these parents, they saw that wow. I am like a parent didn't have that chances in my childhood, so I want to give the best thing to my child. So I select the best tutor. I invest myself fully into that kid. I dedicate myself, and it's like a sort of compensation,
Sure.
moral compensation.
Okay, yes.
If I hadn't had that in the past, I'll give it to my child.
Sure.
So it's I think that's one of the things that we have to remind. Okay. Thank you for your questions, Chris. If you have, you can ask. But I have one question.
Okay.
After watching this video, someone wants to come to Ukraine. What are, let's say, 2 or 3 things that the person should remember if this person decides to Ukraine right now? Maybe your advice as a tourist, because you're a tourist.
Sure, yeah.
What should your do's and don'ts for a foreigner in Kyiv or in Ukraine?
Okay. I think choose your clothes wisely. When I first came here, it was quite warm, and now I'm having to buy clothes. It was a hard trip from Warsaw. The bus ride was close to 20 hours or something, and so you have to be motivated to come here, there's certain requirements you need, insurance and all that, war insurance and this type of thing. I think you need to look at. But if they're coming in regards to circus, I think there is just an incredible opportunity here. It is so rich with teachers and and studios and schools. I think they just need to reach out, and contact people.
So just dare and come to Ukraine.
Yes, I would probably say if you can pick up the language a little bit, that would be great.
Okay, then your favorite dish in Ukrainian. What's that?
Sure. Probably borscht. Is that Ukrainian?
Yeah, that's
Okay,
borscht. That's
okay.
Ukrainian.
Okay, I do like the borscht.
That's a traditional Ukrainian cuisine.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
The restaurants, they're getting to know me personally, so yeah, it's very nice.
Good.
I wonder what circus brings to why the government has sort of said for certain non-military and stuff like that, allocated a certain amount of people in circus arts, just to touch on what that is giving to the community sort of thing, as far as like the military, that they find that important enough using circus to lift the spirits of people.
That's a constant fight. And circuses in Ukraine, they are state-owned,
Right.
and they are financed by the state. So every year, they have to prove their value that they bring to Ukrainian society, because
Right.
they have a budgeting period, and they show the results and so on. So speaking about numbers, we can tell that, let's say, National Circus of Ukraine was attended by 80,000 plus spectators during the last year, so
Right.
just in Kyiv.
Sure.
And that's the best proof. Circus right now plays a role which will be also maybe learned even in the future, because this is the art that allows you to, let's say, escape for an hour or two into a different reality.
Sure.
So, and this is reality of something that's just magical, that is totally good, that shows the amazingness of the person, of the skills of the person, and so on, and gives you like a motivation to go outside and to live, actually. And we talk about that role of the circus. Definitely, there's a lot of pressure on the circus from different organizations, because we discussed with you some things with the traditional circus that is experiencing. Secondly, there are some people who are saying that, okay, we are budgeting circus and we are budgeting in art, but the core problem in Ukraine is war. We have to budget military first of all.
Sure.
But I think that right now Ukrainian government takes the position that we have to preserve the circus, not maybe to invest in the development, but we have to keep it and see what will happen next. So the circuses themselves, they see the role of a sort of like a recreational thing for people, recovering and saving the tradition that we really have.
Great.
And giving the space and the opportunity for kids that you saw to feel the circus, and because they will grow up, and we hope that in year 2, 3 this war will end up. And the question is, when we end up this war, what do we have? Should we reconstruct the circus? Should we rebuild it, or should we right now to invest something to save it, as let's say, to keep it as it is at least, than to make the country prospering? Because the society generally, it may be a surprise for everyone, but people, when they understood in I would say the second half of 2022 that, okay, we are winning this war, we saved the country, it's become a huge period for Ukrainian culture at all. So many people went to theaters, to cinemas. There were lots of projects related to Ukrainian culture. So people rethought and started rethinking their roots, and saw that their culture goes from centuries behind, and let's say ethnical, traditional stuff in theaters, cinemas, circuses right now is very popular, and that's something that drives this art as well.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Maybe some more questions, Chris?
Yeah.
How can we get to the purse when we decide? So how we can get to your city in Australia? So
Australia.
how long will it take us, and what's the best road?
I think at the moment, from Warsaw to Dubai, I think that's 6 hours, and you've got to stop over from Dubai then to Perth is 11 hours.
So there is a direct flight to Perth,
from Dubai. I don't. There might be some direct flights from Perth to Warsaw, but that's the way I came: Perth, Dubai, Warsaw.
Got it.
Bus.
Okay,
Yeah, cool.
Chris, thank you very much for your openness. Thank you very much for being our guest. I hope to see you this weekend, so in a few days, at the National Circus of Ukraine. We should definitely watch the show there. And I encourage all the people who watch in Australia this podcast to share it. And my, let's say, idea, or let's call it idea, to have an photo exhibition about Ukrainian circus in Perth in Australia,
That would be fantastic.
is active. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Max. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Lovely to meet you. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chris.
Cheers.